in this little world in which they've been brought up. So much so that in one lesson I was reading just a story in which a child was lost, and we were just exploring language. A child was lost and was eventually found, and the closing sentence of the story, this young fundamentalist Christian woman in the class said very, a loud voice, "Thank you, Jesus." As if that fictional story had to be accompanied by the relevant, thank you to the Lord response. And so that affective component of fundamentalists, I call the thank you Jesus response, because it's always associated with something that feels good. Now, and I think that's important, but it's another tack that I don't want to get into in my short little talk today, but it's a really interesting one. More important is the way that fundamentalists are oppositional. That they are closed-minded in many senses. One of those senses is their simple inability to be open-minded because of their restrictive language problems. But another one is because when I say to them, "I'm sorry, but that your idea, your belief that the world was created 6,000 years ago is simply wrong," when I say that to them, they say, "How do you know? That's only your opinion. I have a right to my opinion." Well, I'm sorry, you don't have a right to your opinion. And I tell them these things, and the opposition from those students grows and grows and grows. Now, if I was a very poor teacher, I could just harangue them and say, "You're wrong. I'm a teacher. I know." Okay, but I don't do that. What I do is, it's like the sort of desensitization programs people have with various phobias, like arachnophobia. You look at a spider from over there, and then you bring it closer. Eventually, and you'll allow it to crawl up your arm. Well, no? I'll work out a program for you.
Won't happen.
Well, I do the same kind of thing. Yeah. In critical thinking, one of the things that I have found effective in attacking this area is to use that method where we look at belief systems that are plainly ridiculous. Okay? And so we might start with things like astrology, which is most people who believe in astrology, so-called, believe it only vicariously. Yeah? They don't mind if it's not real, but they think it's a pastime. It's I read my stars, etc., etc. Right? But they're not particularly offended if you say, "Well, it's bullshit." Right? They go, yeah, well, I kind of know it's bullshit. And you say, "Well, let's work out why it's bullshit. And let's work out why people actually believe in it." And so in my classes, I'll put them in groups of people, and they've got to come up with arguments and why astrology is rubbish. Okay? And the good thing about that is that they get rewarded for good critical thinking. And they see in their peers the respect that comes from those who can see that person is actually thinking well. This person is using reason, putting together coherent arguments in good English, using all of the good words. All right? And they start to get feeling good about that. All right? Well, once we do that for several weeks, I then move on to thinking about things like theism. Let's look at our ideas about God. And of course, you see some of them go, uh-oh. Okay. But you can start off very, very well with that. And what I do is, who believes in Zeus? Okay. You know, and so we look at the pantheon of gods and we say, well, we don't believe it. Okay, who believes in God? And several will put their hands up. Okay? And I say, well, let's examine that. Right? Let's examine it in exactly the way we've been examining every other aspect of what I'd call woo, you know, but I put it in different words. Right? And happily, even though many of the theists, or most of the theists, will not give up their theism just because they've come to one of Laurie's classes, unfortunately, they at least can accommodate, by the end of a year's work with me, they can accommodate that it's okay to doubt. It's okay to be sceptical, and it's okay to inquire. Right? And it's okay to expand your use of language and your use of reasoning and critical thinking skills to make a difference to how you work out the world. And I find that gratifying. The most gratifying thing I've ever had is somebody who came to me at the end of a year who had been a New Earth creationist, you know, fundamentalist, and who, at the end of the year, told me that she'd renounced the entire belief system. And I thought, job well done. Well, and she did that. She did that because she really actively applied these newfound skills to her own. I think now, you know, that's a 1 in a million, of course. But at the very least, being able to develop, especially young people, you know, people of 17 or 18 who already know everything, being able to develop their critical thinking skills to the point where they can at least accommodate criticism and discourse that is not simply self-perpetuating is a wonderful thing. And so, I mean, for our purposes, we generally come across adults who are steeped in certain modes of thinking, and so the arguing with the Sandys of the world and the like is probably going to be pointless in the end. Do you think, Steve? Do you think we would ever change somebody like Sandy?
At what age can language play skills be successfully taught? Is it too late for people like Sandy? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it might be. Certainly it's too late for somebody like a Bernstein, I would think.
Totally bizarre person.
Yeah, entirely bizarre, and steeped in a certain modality of thought that doesn't allow him to. Well, see, Bernstein's a really interesting character because Bernstein is entirely oppositional in his thinking. You know, not accommodationist at all. Will not accommodate different ideas. And I think Bernstein has got stuck there somewhere.
Something that did come to mind when you were talking about that thing about people being trapped in a jail of restricted language.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not just that they're locked in, we're kind of locked out. The language that we use doesn't fit in their box.
Well, and also...
Or is it possible that we can have language that gets into that?
Well, and also, that's true. And also, our language is threatening as well. You know, this is part of another Bernstein, you know, who was a real scientist, looked at in-group, out-group behaviours, a psychologist. If we call psychologists real scientists. My two best friends are both psychologists, and I get them to that one all the time. But Bernstein looked at how language is used in in-group, out-group dynamics, and found that the language of the in-group is this perpetually self-reinforcing measure, right, that has this affective component, this emotional component, yeah? You know what I've got, I think. Got it. And so the language of the out group, right, has to be a